Kent Lake is right about here on the map in southeastern Michigan. You've driven by it on the expressway, Kensington Metropolitan Park, and it has a lot of panfish, right, Emmett?
Yeah.
But Emmett Holmes from Livonia used his spear not too long ago and put this in the ice chest. You know, it doesn't look so big in the ice chest, Emmett. How big is it?
21 pounds, 9.5 ounces.
Well, you're going to hear about this trophy in just a moment because it's Thursday night. Time for Michigan Outdoors.
From the rugged shore and woodlands of the north, its history of copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fisheries. To the farmlands of the southern counties, we'll look around again at all that waits the sportsman in the state of Michigan.
Well, Emmett, people say that doesn't look like a 21-pounder in the ice chest. How about picking it up?
Okay.
Here's where your work begins. This is a northern pike. Generally, the big trophy master angler northerns over 20 pounds come from the UP in northern Michigan, but look at that. How did that feel when you saw that coming through the hole in the ice in your shanty?
It was the biggest fish I've seen.
I imagine. What's the biggest pike you've gotten out of Kent Lake before?
Probably about 8 pounds.
Yeah, that's a good fish in anybody's book, but a 21-pounder. What's the secret? What was the setup? You had
I think it had to do with the large decoy.
Okay.
I had a 13.5-inch sucker.
Live sucker?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it was tethered down there,
Right,
swimming
around.
And this pike came in. Did it come in fast?
Came in slow,
Real slow.
looking for a meal.
I see. How close did it get to your decoy?
Real close. He was right on top of it.
But it didn't come in and grab it?
Nope, came in real slow.
Well, that's the way those fish do in the winter. 21-pounder. That's terrific. And you were standing there with your spear, and how big was the hole in the ice?
About 20 inches by 40 inches.
Good size.
Good size hole.
Let's take a look at the spear here. Do you sharpen your spear?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Try to keep it needle sharp.
7 points on it, and it isn't particularly heavy.
No, I throw it more than just let it go.
Okay, and the line on here, where do you tie the line?
To my shanty.
In case you miss and...
Well, I let go of the spear.
Oh, you do. How long was this fish battling?
Not real long. He just went around the hole a couple times, and that was it.
And you brought him up. Imagine everybody from all around came to see that.
Nobody saw it.
Nobody?
No.
Why not? Oh, you
I don't
didn't?
know. Nobody looked.
I'll be darned. It's no big deal, huh? Well, they're looking right now, let me tell you. I'll bet you. I hope there aren't a lot of people going out on Kent Lake this weekend.
Oh, it's pretty
To
bad.
spear, yes, it is. Ice is
Real
terrible, pretty much all over the state. So a warning on that. Get after these in the spring. But Steve Kensel, come on in here. He's from the Extension Service, a fisheries specialist at Michigan State University. Steve, how can you tell this is a northern pike?
Well, actually, it's not that too difficult. One of the characteristics that the northern pike and the muskie have is this posterior located dorsal fin. Besides that, the coloration is quite a bit different on the pike as opposed to the muskie.
Okay, of course, you can tell the pike and the muskie from their snouts and their long, snake-like appearance, sometimes
That's right.
called a snake. But we'll go to a slide right now that you brought that has a pike and a muskie, the northern pike on top with the spots, little bean-shaped yellowish spots, and the muskie has...
The muskie usually has dark spots on a light background as opposed to these light spots on a dark background.
Okay, and of course the tiger muskie and some of those has the vertical bars. But also
That's
here,
right.
if we look at the cheek, this is something that the biologists say a northern pike's cheek has scales all over the entire cheek.
Right.
Now, you have a muskie head there.
Yes, I do. And you can see on this that the cheek is just partially scaled up on this upper portion of it.
Up on the top.
Right.
Now, there's another thing. It's kind of an interesting way. Emmett, if you could tip this over here. We've all seen these holes that are around the chin of a northern pike, and they're usually about 10 or 11 on a northern.
That's correct.
And on a muskie, they're how many?
Usually 12 to 20.
And they're the little holes. What are those holes for, anyway?
They're for sensory perception of the fish.
So the northern pike, what would he sense?
Well, it
With those?
senses what's in the water and various prey that might be present, and
Sort
other
of like
types of things.
nostrils?
Yeah, somewhat similar to that.
Robin, we'll lift that up here, Emmett. We just have just a little bit to go. Getting kind of heavy, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's getting heavy.
What are you going to do with this fish?
I'm gonna have it mounted.
Terrific. What pose?
I don't know yet.
Straight? You don't know? Well,
I
that's
talked to the guy.
That's an exciting thing, getting a trophy like this mounted. Well, you made our Trophy Angler of the Week here on Michigan Outdoors. Congratulations. We'll expect to see some fish that you catch this summer back on the show.
Well, I hope I do too.
Well, I hope so. Well, congratulations. Good luck. And right now, it's time for us to go over with Ed Groves to the mailbag.
Well, Fred, we got a lot of mail last week, a lot of response on that elk question.
Well, that is a hot issue, and we're going to go through some of the letters right now. By the way, we only got 2 letters two that said, no, they don't want an elk hunt. We'll put them both on right now. The first one said, an excerpt was, after seeing the film showed on the old Michigan Outdoors, I feel it showed Michigan hunters in a poor light. Let the DNR themselves do the shooting and thinning out. And that's in reference to the first elk hunt the DNR had back in the 1960s.
Right. From Marquette, I would like to see some of these animals moved here to the UP, regardless of the cost of the DNR.
The overwhelming majority of the letters were along these lines. Please encourage the DNR to hold a quality controlled elk hunt. I also like the idea of assigning a DNR employee with each permit holder.
From Dearborn, these animals could become very destructive if allowed to increase in number.
And Dodd Bradfish from Flushing really explained this. He said deer and elk can live together, each selecting their own range if they have enough food. The problem is that when elk move into an area, within a few years the deer are forced to move out because of winter feed and the fact that the elk are the dominant animal. What winter feed that would be available to either elk or deer in deep snow or icy conditions would be eaten by elk simply because they are able to reach much higher.
If we want to keep the elk in Michigan, we have to find an efficient way to keep the population down.
And for Mason, it would be the most inhumane thing to let the elk herd die of starvation or diseases. I've been waiting for years, hoping the herd would become large enough to hunt. I can't afford to go out west to hunt elk in some other state.
From Hamburg, I think we should use the most effective method, the hunter, but only if the season is restricted to bow hunters only.
And Robert Main asked me a question. He says, I vote yes for hunting elk, and if you get an edge on whether they will be issuing permits, please let me know. I don't know what kind of edge I could get, but...
Okay, count us in favor of a well-regulated elk hunt here in Michigan if it is found necessary, a truly proven game management tool.
And that was signed by about 27 employees of the GM second shift plant, Cadillac Motor Plant. And our final tally, Ed, on the elk for this week. Last week it was 75-7, most of them pro.
Right, this week it was 64 yes and 2 no.
Well, Dr. Howard Tanner,
Sir, how are you?
you are retiring, as you announced a little less than a week ago.
Let me make that precise. I'm retiring from the job as director.
Ah,
That doesn't mean I'm retiring.
what's coming up?
I don't know, but I'm going to be working.
Okay, that'll be June 1st.
Okay.
Bob Garner here, who's been keeping an eye on the legislature and the DNR, has been working with us on this. But we're going to ask you a few questions in the next 8 or 10 minutes about the DNR. Let's talk first. You know, you were a controversial director. You noticed
Somebody told me that was true.
You noticed,
Yeah.
you noticed that, but you were a director for 8 years. What are some of the things that you regard as your major accomplishments?
Well, I think that the organization is much more professional, and I would go through forestry, geology, water quality. I think we've integrated the environmental branch with the natural resources branch. I think we have programs in wildlife and in fisheries, in RAP, particularly in law enforcement. I regard the Pigeon River settlement as a major achievement. I like to see the pace that we've set for the rest of the country on toxic waste cleanup, such as Hooker and Oakland Ankerson, a number of those. I'm proud of the whole darn outfit, and I'm just egotistical enough to be kind of proud of what I've accomplished.
Well, this whole darn outfit is a bigger whole darn outfit than it was 15 years ago. Well, you're talking
big.
toxic waste, really things that were a part of public health,
Yeah.
the state fair. The DNR has just mushroomed. You had a lot more to handle and a lot more people to please than previous DNR directors.
That's true. It is a big outfit. It happens to be organized the way it should be. It should be inclusive of these items because they're also interrelated, but it does make for a large task, and they're rather complicated, and sometimes, believe it or not, a controversial one.
Frustrating?
Frustrating, satisfying, fun, exhausting, all of those things.
Gonna miss it?
Sure, I'm going to miss it.
Well, you've made a mark in 8 years. The DNR director with the longest tenure. But, let's talk about, I have a film that I did on Morton F's program, and you know who introduced me to Morton F., got me the job with him back in the 1960s?
I remember.
I want to thank you very much for that. Dr. Howard Tanner did that, linked Morton F. and I together, and I did a film back in 1969, which I called Many Happy Returns, which was on Mort's show. So why don't we take a moment right now because you are known as the father of the coho,
Right.
title which you sort of grimace at now and then.
Well, it's all right. I love to fish.
But you were the man who brought coho salmon and the Atlantic salmon, the Chinook salmon, to Michigan. Let's go back now to this Morton F. film, something that linked Howard Tanner and I together about 15 years ago, and it's called Many Happy Returns, so take a look at it right now. 40 years ago, the Great Lakes were teeming with fish. Sport fishermen and commercial fishermen shared bountiful harvests until two things happened. Commercial fishing got so competitive that it began cleaning out the commercial fish populations. At the same time, a very sinister critter, the sea lamprey, migrated from the Atlantic Ocean through the St. Lawrence Seaway and into the Great Lakes. Michigan's trout streams turned out to be excellent breeding grounds for lampreys, and by the 1950s, these hideous creatures had attached themselves to every lake trout and steelhead trout they could find. Lampreys literally sucked the life juices from a famous, profitable, and productive fishery. Years and years of chemical treatments in lamprey breeding streams finally brought them under control. But then, a little fish called the alewife, which had also straggled into the Great Lakes from the Atlantic Ocean, had a population explosion. Alewives would normally have been kept under control by lake trout, but since the lake trout population was at an all-time low, the alewife population soared to an all-time high. So high that summer die-offs left Michigan's beaches covered with millions of dead fish. But then two fisheries biologists, Dr. Howard Tanner and Dr. Wayne Tody, came up with a unique plan. They proposed obtaining some coho salmon eggs from fish hatcheries on the Pacific coast, hatching them out in the Platte River Fish Hatchery, raising them for a year and a half, and then releasing these 6 inchers into trout streams. If they did this, they theorized that the salmon should find their way into the Great Lakes to eat the alewives. Well, Tanner and Tody thought that these hungry, fast-growing salmon would solve our problems, and the first coho release in 1966 proved them to be right. Our beaches haven't been littered with alewives the way they were in the mid-60s, and the Great Lakes sport fishery was reborn. It's important to remember that fish hatcheries have been the key to the rebirth of the Great Lakes fishery. Natural reproduction plays only a small part. Starting in August and on through the fall, the adult salmon begin their journeys up their home streams to spawn. But the DNR uses weirs on several major spawning streams to intercept the salmon so their eggs can be taken and hatched under ideal conditions. But in the streams, spawning continues into the winter. Natural reproduction would work all right, but the problem is Michigan doesn't have enough large spawning streams to raise enough salmon for the Great Lakes. 90% of our salmon have to be raised in hatcheries because our spawning streams can only provide about 10%. After the salmon spawn, they die. Their mission has been accomplished. But the eggs they leave behind in the gravel incubate for about 6 weeks before hatching, and the baby salmon stay down in the gravel for a few more weeks until they absorb their yolk sacs. When they finally emerge, they have to face another 14 or 16 months in the stream, looking for food and trying to avoid being used for food by larger fish. Very few survive. The salmon in the hatcheries don't face these risks. Most of them survive the year and a half, growing to about 6 inches in length. In April, millions of these salmon are released in selected rivers and streams all over Michigan. The streams they're released in are the streams they'll come back to when they mature after a year and a half in the Great Lakes. A few of these little male salmon will mature during the summer. They're called jacks, and they'll grow to somewhere between 3 and 5 pounds by the fall when they return to spawn. Most of the salmon will spend 2 summers in the lakes before maturing. A normal mature coho will weigh somewhere between 10 and 15 pounds, while a 3-year-old Chinook or king salmon will average closer to 25 or 30. And believe me, catching a 30-pound salmon is an experience you won't soon forget. Action like this is why so many Michigan anglers are hoping that coho, chinook, steelhead trout, and even the new Atlantic salmon will be making many happy returns up our Michigan rivers and streams in the years ahead. Well, Doc, that was your program, the salmon program. You got to be mighty proud of that.
I'm proud. I've had a lot of fun, and I enjoy just going down and watching people catching the salmon. And I catch a few myself.
Okay, well, looking ahead to a new DNR director. Bob?
Dr. Tanner, how much real difference in a game bag or in a limit of fish, in the sportsman being successful, how much difference can a director make in that?
He can make a lot of difference, although most people won't make the connection. He's sort of like a supply sergeant or a source of, the money has to be there. The money has to be pulled from the legislature and from people who pay licenses. Professional people have to be put in place. Good programs have to be promoted, winnowed out, prioritized, and other programs eliminated.
Of course, that's gonna be a tough job in the years ahead. We have budget cuts, faced with a probable increase in license fees. You're gonna have to wrestle through, or somebody's gonna have to wrestle through. People are gonna try to dismantle the agency that you put together and have such as a strong agency right now.
A couple of bills to do that right now?
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
To take the power of deciding who's going to be the DNR director away from the Natural Resources Commission and give it to the governor. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, let me say I would express a feeling of relief that somebody else is going to handle all these tasks. I've carried them for quite a long time, and I feel more relaxed right now than I have in a long time. The commission ought to select the director. Just simply on the basis that it's a system that I think has worked well. I don't know that everybody agrees with me, but it's worked well. And let's not change it. I would hope that there would be a good deal of understanding between the commission and the governor in the selection process. I think it would be very difficult for a director who didn't have the support of both.
Quite yet. I want you to see something here. The DNR magazine that came out had an article on it, Visitor in White, about the snowy owl. And right over here at Michigan State, Dr. Jim Sikarsky, who is a veterinarian, has an injured snowy owl, and we went over there yesterday to see how that is doing. What's the matter with this snowy owl, Jim?
Oh, it has an injured wing. Probably flew into a power line or something like that.
Where'd this happen?
Crystal Falls in the Upper Peninsula. Some winters owls come this far down. Like last winter we had several owls down this far, but this year I haven't seen any down this far in the state, but this one was in the Upper Peninsula.
Oh, okay. Well, you have to go in and check it now?
Right. I want to see how the wing is doing, and also when we brought it out here, the bird had lice, which we treated, and I want to make sure that we got them all.
Okay. Well, where we are right now is with Dr. Jim Sikarsky here at Michigan State in the flight pens. Not many people get inside these pens to
That's right.
go. We're going to do it, though. Come on, follow with us. We're going to go in and capture this snowy owl so Jim Sikarsky can check out its injuries. We don't know what's going to happen here. Well, is there any chance it could get injure itself any further, Jim?
Well, there's always that chance, and we'll, try not to allow it a chance to bang against the walls or anything. I'll hopefully catch it pretty quickly, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Snowy owl, a beautiful bird. As he said, this winter was so mild. Well, that didn't take long. Let's get down here.
That was fairly easy because I didn't need to get it all tangled up in the net.
Listen,
you can see, it's hard to tell who has who here.
Yeah. The talons. Now, would he bite?
Yeah, owls usually go after you with their feet rather than their beak, and they will bite, but you can see he's not that interested.
Not too interested. But what beautiful yellow eyes.
They really are impressive. And this is
is
the
this the
injured
injury?
wing. You can see it's healed pretty well. There's a little teeny scar there, and that yellow is an ointment that we've put on it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Ooh. This rather upsets him. You're checking for lice now?
yeah,
Well, they have feathers all over their bodies. I mean, look, that looks like rabbit feet,
yeah, they look.
actually.
They're made to walk on the snow.
Now, its talons are all bunched up right now.
Yeah, but they wouldn't necessarily have to stay that way, Fred. I'd be.
You'd be careful. Am I being
yeah,
a little
sure
dangerous
would.
here?
Yes. And see, this bird injured the elbow wing, the joint in the wing as well, and so it's not that good of a prognosis because it needs to be able to migrate back up north. And if it cannot be returned to the wild, there's a good chance that we can find a nice place for it at the Kellogg Bird Sanctuary.
Yeah, there's a lot of birds of prey down there that people can go down and see around Battle Creek.
Yeah, a lot of them are what I call non-returnables that have been through our program and haven't been able to be released back to the wild. And
One question, of course, the coloration here of a snowy owl, so it blends in with the snow. Why are its eyes yellow? Does that have anything strange about its eyes?
My experience is the nocturnal birds, the owls that hunt at night, have darker eyes. Like in Michigan, we have the barred owl and the barn owl, and they have dark irises. Most of the other owls hunt at dawn and dusk, and indeed the snowy owl hunts all day long. So they seem to be able to see just fine during the day. Now, this bird, by size, is big enough to be a female. Birds of prey, the females are always larger, males are smaller, but it doesn't have that much dark feathers on it. Males usually are much lighter in color than the females and smaller. This bird is lighter but large, so maybe it's a large male.
Interesting. A snowy owl, which not too many of them came into Michigan this past year.
Right.
Well, good, Jim. What's its chances of recovery? Or is
See how it's using that wing? That's a real good sign. And we have it out here where it can fly and exercise, and hopefully its wing will get stronger. You can see it droops, though. The lice are gone. We treated it a couple times for the lice before we brought it out here, and the wing is moving fine, so there's a real good chance for it to recover, but maybe not to be releasable.
Okay, well, you can finish checking that over, Jim. Thank you very much, Jim Sikarsky. We're going to go now into the trophy report while Jim is checking over that, and we're going to start off with something a little unusual. Jim, I want to congratulate you for becoming a father. When?
On Valentine's Day.
On Valentine's Day.
Identical twin daughters.
There they are. Anna Teresa and Sarah Jane.
5 pounds 8 ounces and 6 pounds 14 ounces. Those are real keepers, I'll tell you.
Okay, those are keepers. And that's our transition right now into our Michigan Outdoors Trophy Report. Speaking of little anglers with promising futures, here's 7-year-old Dennis Bruning from Rogers City. Evidently, someone is teaching him well because he's already a master angler with this 1 pound 14-ounce perch that's 14.5 inches long. This is one of many master angler perch to come out of Long Lake in Alpena County this winter. Dennis caught it 2 weeks ago, right after lunch, using a wiggler for bait. You know, another lake that's a good producer and has been this winter is Lake Gogebic in the Upper Peninsula. Known mainly for perch and walleye, Lake Gogebic also has a population of lake herring, also called Cisco. This one weighed 2 pounds 10 ounces, was 19 inches long. John Karenin from Marinisco caught it mid-afternoon on February 8th, jigging with a Swedish pimple. It's a not-so-common Michigan fish. That's a Cisco, also known as lake herring. Now back to Long Lake in Alpena County. I don't know what it is about that lake this year, but it's been producing the big ones. Here's a fish we normally don't see until spring running up the streams, a white sucker. At 4 pounds 2 ounces, this 21-incher makes local angler Isidore Suzek a master angler. Seems everyone's been using wigglers for bait this winter in Long Lake, but you can see why. Those wigglers are catching the trophies. And back to the Upper Peninsula for a trophy northern muskie. The big pike and muskie this year so far have been taken by spearing. Dan Vaughn from Manistee was sitting over his decoy in his shanty on Indian Lake in Schoolcraft County when this monster passed underneath. 26 pounds, 4 ounces, 45 inches long. That could be the top northern muskie taken in Michigan this year. And here's one of the top Great Lakes muskies. They're the largest of muskies, this one tipping the scales at 30 pounds, 5 ounces. It's 46.5 inches long, speared from one of Michigan's top muskie lakes, Skeegamog Lake in Grand Traverse County. A thrill of a lifetime for Williamsburg resident Mike Norton. Congratulations, Mike. This could be your once-in-a-lifetime appearance as our Michigan Outdoors Master Angler of the Week. Well, here's a stringer of trophy fish, Ed, that gathered a lot of attention in our outdoor art competition.
Grandpa's Little Angler. This is one of the 10 winners in our wildlife art contest. All the paintings are going to be on exhibit the 19th and 20th in Ann Arbor.
And that's where people can go down and meet the artists of the year, our
right.
Michigan Outdoors Artists of the Year. And well, that wraps up our edition of Michigan Outdoors. We're going to go back to the flight pen at Michigan State University with Dr. Jim Sikarsky and check on how that owl is doing.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, now It's clacking its beak.
Right.
Why
It's
does
that's a threat gesture, and it's also hissing. They do that to scare you away. It makes them sound like a cat when they hiss, and that clicking of the bill, and then they puff their feathers up is supposed to intimidate you. So,
Well, let's get one last look at this bird around the back.
okay, you can see the barring on the back.
Would it nip me, you think? Maybe.
It just might. Here,
Well,
I'll
the-
hold the.
Okay, that's a
Wing
beautiful
out.
bird. Look at that. How much does it weigh?
It weighs almost 3.5 pounds. It's a good-sized bird. It's probably, I don't know, by size I'd say a female, by coloration I'd say a male. So.
Okay, well, are you done checking it over?
Yep. Everything looks fine. I think the bird's, the way it's flying, I'm encouraged by the prognosis might be better than I thought it was.
Okay, well, set her down. Set him down, whatever it is. It's a snowy owl here at the flight pens at Michigan State. It's been rehabilitated, and it'll be out in the wild, maybe in not too long.